This is a great segue into sort of the last kind of area, story theme that I want to talk to you about, which is Somerset County, the community, and the land that was then, from my understanding, often donated or sold to create the memorial. And I'd like to kind of start off with the story of the local elementary school that flew flags in their yard. The students put up paintings and signs and thank you messages for the first responders and all the people that came in to help and support after the tragedy. So can you talk a little bit about the day that the FBI agent left and stopped at the school?
There was an FBI agent named Todd McCausland. He came back years later and they were asking me the stories he remembered. He said, I just remember driving out there every day, past these schools, and they would have, next to there'd be signs and then flags. The next day, more. Every day there was something. Thank you for the first responder. Honor the heroes. These are kids. And he was leaving to go back to Quantico because the FBI was there about 14 days. He's leaving his way again. He said, I got to stop at this school. So he stops in, he goes in, he finds the principal's office. And he said, I just want to, you tell the students how much this meant to us. The principal said, hand the microphone, tell them yourself. So he didn't put himself in that situation. He gave him a microphone and he was, but he had to say, boys and girls, I just want to tell you how much, I'm one of the FBI agents. I want to tell you how much this meant to us as we're out there every day in this situation to have your support. And he said, I said, thank you. I'm trying to get out of the building. So I wouldn't start crying. And he said, as I was out in the hallway, kids started flooding out into the hallways because they wanted to see the FBI guy.
Right.
So I think, it affected everyone, but if you were in Somerset County, if you were near that crash site, you knew somebody who was a first responder. You knew somebody who was somehow connected to not the flight, but the aftermath. And it really was deep. It was intrinsic with those people. And it kind of reflective of what that whole community did. And again, it goes back to the family members saying, if it had to happen anywhere, I'm glad it happened here because of the way they were treated. Small town America came through, small town Pennsylvania, the way these folks opened their hearts and homes to the family members, to the first responders. We opening my home, you need a place to sleep, baking cookies, bringing drinks. There's so many volunteers organizing those. That happened. And sure, this happened in New York and at DC, but there was also an organized response there. Here it was the local citizens doing it. And that's eventually how the temporary memorial started, because a couple of ladies in church one day said, we can't have these people coming to our community and having no one greet them. So they started a little group called the Ambassadors, and they would try to be out there as much as they could just to greet people. They didn't know much of the story. And the one lady was the wife of the Shanksville fire chief. They're all tied, whose son is now the head ranger at the Flight 93 National Memorial. I mean, it runs through these families out there. The Schaefers, Terry Schaefer was the fire chief. Kathy Schaefer was one of the early volunteers who did so much work. And Adam Schaefer is the ranger who is the chief interpretive ranger there and means so much to the site, and was a Shanksville fireman. So some of the people who worked there, Adam answered the call that day. And he's now a ranger out there. So that kind of tells you that doesn't happen anywhere else. Or that's very unique. There's so much uniqueness to this site. And that's one of the things that the tight knittedness, if that's a word, of the Shanksville and Somerset County community. And all those little towns, they all had fire departments and they all showed up that day. And so everybody's just trying to pitch in, and they all have those stories. And it's again, we talked about the number of chapters after the crash. That's part of the Flight 93 legacy. Those folks, those small town folks, all coming together and doing what they did, showing leadership in their own way. Sometimes big leadership, sometimes just little things that they did. But somebody had to do them. No one was assigned to do this. It wasn't you're now promoted to vice president. You do this. They all did, from the people on the plane to the people in the community. They did this on their own.
Yeah, I think you put the exact mark on what I was thinking, which is, that there is such a thread between, the folks on the plane where we started to where we are in our conversation now about stepping up in big and small ways in roles that you thought maybe 5 minutes ago weren't going to be for you. But you did, you know, and sort of this idea of the unlikely leader that sort of takes the opportunity. And I think it also speaks really volumes to, like, you don't have to be doing heroic acts every single day. It's like not humanly possible, right? But that small acts can make a huge difference in someone's life, in your family's life, in your community's life, in your, you know, workplace life.
A collection of people doing little good things added up to something heroic. Maybe each person wasn't, but the effort was heroic. And sometimes you can be a part of that too. You know, yeah, everybody, we all can't be the hero. We can contribute to heroism. And I think what those folks did, and what many of them are still doing today out there, because, you know, the memorial's out in the middle of nowhere. It really is. It's hard to get to. The visitation they get is a tribute to what people think of this story, because you just don't stumble across the Flight 93 National Memorial. It's not like you're in New York City. Oh, here's another museum. Let's go to this. You go there as a destination, and the fact that so many people still show up out there shows how that whole story continues to resonate, and hopefully will continue to resonate for a long time.
So that brings me to, you know, one of my kind of final questions for you, which is, I mean, I hope I'm not making too big of an assumption, but if I was you and I had done the research and written this book, I would imagine it's had a pretty big impact on your life, aside from doing, you know, I'm sure very regular interviews around this time every year. But just personally and professionally for you, I'm sure it has had a huge impact on you. So I hope I'm not asking you anything too vulnerable, but I am kind of curious. Are you willing to share a little bit about sort of what you've taken from this story for yourself? How have you sort of, if that makes sense, what I'm trying to ask you, where's this?
In a way, I was seeking something in a way by going out there just to, you know, before the memorial was open. I was always just interested. I wanted to learn more about this. It struck me. It was historic, and it was relatively near my home. So in a way, I didn't have a front row seat, but I was blessed by this opportunity, which just kind of fell into my hands, of meeting these people and hearing their stories, and having the honor of delivering their story. I think that's the most important service that I think, if it's possible, to let people know what happened. I mean, had there not been a book, this story isn't out there. And, you know, I've been able to become friends with some of these family members, the people in particular who are so dedicated and there all the time. And you feel their empathy and their appreciation, but how much they still feel the loss 20 years later. You know, there's a guy named Gordy Felt, who's the longtime president of the families of Flight 93. In fact, he's the guy who wrote the letter to the Penguins. That got this all stuff. And he said, "What does it feel like when you come here?" And he said, "I feel like I get to spend some time with my brother." Like, that's what they feel. And every once in a while, you'll see flowers laid there. And I was, you know, we talked about the public can get to about 75 yards of the actual crash site. Only the family members can get out to the actual crash site. I volunteered there. I was volunteering there a few weeks ago, and one of the family members was out by the boulder, and the visitors were just amazed. They were enthralled. They were, you know, just that a family member was there. It added to their experience. To think it's important for visitors. I think I can tell by the questions they ask that the family members are so involved that they come back. It's just it makes it a much more personal memorial than places like Gettysburg or Antietam, which I also love. You know, if your ancestor was there, it's your great grandfather. Here, this lady was coming. This is where her daughter died. You know, and so you have those first generation family members. It's so important to them. In 50 or 75 years, it will probably be like Gettysburg, and you'll probably be able to walk out there, maybe at least have some private tours. But now it's just so important to those family members. That's their grave site. That's their loved one cemetery. And so I think it's very appropriate and special that it's done that way. So you see, but people, just the common visitors, appreciate the family members' involvement. It's the one thing, that they commonly ask all the time. So I just having a front row seat to that, and then being able to volunteer. And there isn't a time, I've been out there so many times, and obviously researched this and wrote a book. And it's when I talk about what the people on that plane did, I still get goosebumps. Again, with that short period of time, I'm still amazed as much as we can know, how they came to the decision to do what they did. It was absolutely the right decision, but you don't know that at the time. They gave themselves a chance. And now that, and they gave us that, I think you used the phrase they used, the beacon, the darkest day in American history in my lifetime. And then you started to hear this story of what they did, and it gave you that motivation. I think that's what brought the country together. There's one event that brought it's the fact that these folks on board did what they did, and we were all able to rally around that. And when you get out there, the country's in a different place right now, but you feel that when you go there. You feel that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's certainly a place that I'm not that far either. I'm a little farther than you are, but I'm in central Pennsylvania, and I think it's a place that, I think I need to add to my list of places to visit. I think I have a different appreciation for it, thanks to you now, than I would have before. So thank you for that. So as we wrap it up, you have another book. This was your first book. You've written 2 others, but one just came out maybe a month ago, actually, July. Armistead and Hancock: Behind the Gettysburg Legend of Two Friends at the Turning Point of the Civil War. Can you give us a quick and dirty on Armistead and Hancock?
Gettysburg Civil War, my real passion. I go to Gettysburg all the time in Antietam, and this is, the Flight 93 book led to 2 Gettysburg books. This one I just came out with. It's the same thing. I'm not one who would write about describing a battle. Battle scenes are in there, but I need like a personal story to write. And these were 2 friends, Lewis Armistead and Winfield Scott Hancock. They were friends. They served together for 19 years in the United States Army. And then the Civil War happens, and all of a sudden, overnight, they become mortal enemies. And they have a gathering out in California. As they're going off to war, they hug and cry and then they meet 2 years later on the field of Pickett's Charge, where Armistead's men attack Hancock's men and both fall wounded. There's no better story that describes what the Civil War did to the country on a personal level. Just, imagine it. But the thing that happened is the novel Killer Angels, which won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1975, about the Battle of Gettysburg, really dramatized this story, and it brought all these people in. And the movie Gettysburg picked up on it, brought all these people in. But it's way over dramatized. So what I wanted to do was get to the real story. And the real story is fascinating. It's just different than what the entire generation has learned to know of this story. So even serious Civil War students have told me, I didn't know that, because movies can have such power over us, Yeah. And the movie it was a great movie, it's a great novel, but it's not a documentary. And so this was trying to get behind the real story. And I love that. I love that part of the research, to do that personal story. So if I do more, that's what I'll continue to do. But it really all started with the opportunity of Flight 93. And it strikes me, Gettysburg means so much to me, and Shanksville's not far away. You're about 100 miles apart. These seismic things in the history of our country happened in South Central Pennsylvania. It's just kind of amazing that we who live here have the opportunity just to drive there and honor the people who served at both of those places. Because I do believe the people in Flight 93 served in a way. They became citizen soldiers in the skies above Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think you do have a comment in your book. I don't have the exact quote here, but something along the lines of that, later, obviously, we would do our official, go to war effort, but really it started on that day with those.
And the coach cabin of Flight 93, that's where the pushback against terror started. They led the way. And it was Wally Miller who said, when he was talking about, he said, he's a history buff too. Where else, he said, other than, Pearl Harbor, or the Civil War, where else did Americans die protecting their country other than Somerset County? We haven't been attacked that much. And he put it in that phrase as someone who loves history. He put them in kind of in that pantheon of heroes, as people who died basically on behalf, as patriots on behalf of protecting their country. And I think
and in a way unbeknownst to them.
Yeah,
obviously
didn't do it didn't do it for that reason. Didn't do it to become heroes. And won't know, but hopefully they're aware. Certainly it lives on through the family members. I remember one thing, if I can just say, on the 10th anniversary, when there were about 5,000 people there on this open field, and the family members were sitting up close, so probably 900 family in seats. Everybody else was standing, and Tom Ridge was there. Who'd been governor of Pennsylvania. And he said, I want to make sure the family members realize how many of you are here. And he said, I want you to turn around and see the public. And the family members turned around and they had not been, and you could tell they were stunned. And the family members, I'm getting chills talking with, stood up and gave the crowd a standing ovation.
Oh, wow.
I will never forget that moment. I don't know if there's video of it, but Ridge just wanted them to, he told me later, because he wrote the foreword for my book. He said, I wanted them to see, I wasn't sure that they appreciated, because they were all looking forward and they're in this still mourning situation.
Sure.
I wanted them to see what their loved ones did, the legacy of what their loved ones did. It's standing there on that hillside. And to see the family members applauding the people who had driven out was something I'll never forget.
Right. That is pretty stunning. And I think it really speaks again to, perseverance and humanity, which I think we have in us. And sometimes I think we forget, and I think we need to tap back into that. And I think your book, although it's a story from 20 years ago, it is so applicable to today. And I think it lives on, and I think you took on a great responsibility to do this.
And I like to say this, I donate all my proceeds to the Friends of Flight 93. So I didn't want to make any money on this project. When I do these book talks, I always say I'm not selling books. I am, but by if you buy a book, you actually make a donation to the memorial. And I wanted it to be that way. And I didn't want the family members who I was interviewing to think I was trying to make any money off their tragedy. This was, that's the contribution I can make. So be it. And I think I just like to let people know that.
Yes, I thank you. That's a perfect way for us to wrap it up. So if you are at all interested, please be sure to check out Tom's book, Flight 93. Check out his newest book that already came out about a month ago, Armistead and Hancock. Tom, thank you so much for spending time with me, talking about this important story and making sure that obviously a story that is not forgotten, because we need to keep bringing it up. Thanks again, Tom. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.